Greetings, Invader Scum. This is Pincognito, aka Pinko, back with another edition of Half Hour or So on the Life of a Finger. This is another Soul Level 60 Invader, but this time with +8 weapon upgrade level, which means we kind of invade a little bit later into the game. So we're using the Executioner's Greatsword, the Heavy Manserpent Hatchet, the Heavy Notched Whip, Iron Round Shields, not quite yet upgraded to +8, but it's still perfectly usable. And then I'm also using the Wolf Ring, which I don't typically wear, but I needed to get to the first poise breakpoint for the Greatsword, which is about 26.95. Stats are kind of a quality-ish build to allow me to use both the Executioner Greatsword and the Black Knight Sword, which we don't see here today, but in a future episode for sure. And the kind of the theme of this build is, well, her name is Carnifex Canary, which is Executioner of Ash in fancy ancient Latin. So we've kind of executioner type weapons, things that fit that thematically to me, but primarily to use this sword, which is just beautiful. One of my earliest invaders mained the Executioner Greatsword, and I had a lot of fun using it. The stomp weapon art I find to be a little tough to hit because it's that twist instead of the uppercut, and I can leave you a bit exposed to backstabs in my experience, but I think it does make a successful appearance in these invasions, so it is possible to hit it successfully. So we'll be doing, I think, entirely invasions in Lothric Castle from the Dragon Barracks, and I hope you enjoy. Alright, let's get to it. Alright, so this is a very, very typical place to spawn in Dragon Barracks. Any fan of Sticky Bandit has probably seen him spawn here several hundred times. So we do the traditional ring swap to Silvercat and try to do a little investigation. Now I should have checked to my right there to see if the spearman was aggroed, because that way you can definitively tell whether they've made it to the next bonfire. But I didn't check, and so I was momentarily unsure as to whether they were in the first room or had already progressed past me here. So I do a quick back to check on the spearman, and he's standing stock still, so now I know they haven't made it this far. And then we see GORVANZ taking damage in the back. So I try to get there in time to help out the Lothric Knight, but I am not successful. So, password summon gold, Mr. Dank Memes, Mrs. Dank Memes, I'm not sure. And GORVANZ are my opponents today. So here I'm just kind of checking out what they've got going on. So kind of somewhat unusual loadouts, and you know, who knows what soul level the Sombro is. He's pretty careless, that's for sure. And his hit points don't seem to be too troublesome, but like I've said before, and I may say every time we see a password summon Phantom, with the damage you just can't predict. Now that was not too much to worry about, but I also have the buff from the priest, which gives you a very nice absorption bonus. So we won't know for sure what kind of damage the Sombro is dealing until that buff wears off. So I'm just trying to get as many hits in as I can while I've got that buff going on, because it's just tremendously powerful boost to your attack rating and to your defensive absorption. So I just get careless right there. I can absolutely space out the Cestus, or the Demon's Fist, sorry, with my Greatsword, but there I just basically walked right up into his face. Again, just walk right into the Demon's Fist. So even with the buff gone, the gold isn't doing extreme damage to me, so I think he actually ended up being soul level 125. Yeah, so it's so puzzling the way that the AR scaling works. I just can't quite figure it out. I've read some speculation that weapons that have really good stat scaling, so like if a weapon has like S stat scaling, those weapons don't downscale as much. The weapons that rely more on high base damage that downscale more appropriately. I'm not really sure where the Dark Sword fits in that dynamic, but that's as plausible an explanation as I've heard. And I guess I think that might also explain why kind of spell buffs to weapons, like Dark Moon Blade, don't seem to scale particularly down to the host level. So here I'm kind of trying to see wait to see what they do. You know, I've got the choke point here, which is very useful, and I was actually kind of hoping to get another buff from the priest, which is why I was just kind of hanging out. So we switch things up a little bit. Let him see the whip, which doesn't deal a ton of damage, but it is a real kind of change of pace. If someone's used to you using a greatsword, a whip is a much different weapon, and it can kind of throw off their spacing a little bit in helpful ways. There I just get kind of careless. But it's not a great option against two people, which I think I decided at that point. You know, looking back at this invasion, I don't know what the Sunbro was doing here. While we let the Pestilent Mercury run its course, I think I could have been more aggressive in this situation. I am as is probably evidenced by now, I'm a pretty cautious invader. And I don't like to go into kind of open spaces when I can be easily flanked by, you know, 2 or more phantoms, or 2 or more opponents. But I think it would have been okay here. They weren't doing a great job of coordinating, and so I think I would have been safe just fighting them here, even without the backup from another Lothric Knight. Here I'm able to space the Sunbro. And so now we're ready for a good, fun one-on-one with this host, right? GORVANZ! So he's initially pretty ready to tangle, and so I was excited about that because I don't get to fight the Demon Fist too often. But he takes a couple lumps, and then you know what's going to happen now. We're off to the races. It's Sonic the Hedgehog time, Looney Tunes time. It's the Resummoner Olympics, and the weapons I have on this build, my typical loadout, they are not great at chase downs. The Man Serpent Hatchet is actually very good for roll catching, but it is not, in my experience, all that great for chase downs. The Executioner Greatsword is actually a bit better, as you can see, at least the way I was playing in this session. So it's pretty clear I'm not going to catch him before the Sunbro comes back. So I'm kind of resigned to that fact at this point. So I'm just trying to deal as much damage as I can before the Sunbro arrives. So Dank Memes is back, and I make my exit. I don't know what to say about Resummoners. I think it's happened to me so many times I'm kind of dull to the pain at this point. And you know, frankly, I kind of let that happen. Sunbro again with a very curious strategy. I'm not sure what he was doing here, because that might be an okay tactic if they're trying to keep me from coming down a certain path, if they have like another means of escape, but there's really nowhere else for them to go, so I don't know what the point of that was, or the prior time. I'm not paying any attention and catch a Crystal Soul Spear to the face. So Sunbro started to space a little better here, or I just started to space worse, I'm not sure which, but he started to catch me in situations where he hadn't previously in the fight. I'm doing my best to take out the Sunbro while the Lothric Knight has the host distracted, but just can't chase him down. So here I try to take out the host while the Lothric Knight is still alive, but it was far too late. That might have been a better strategy a minute or so before. Classic turn and burn. Goodbye, Sunbro. So now, resummon once, shame on you. Resummon twice, shame on me. So I switched to a far superior chase down weapon here. It's not a spear, but compared to a great sword or an axe, a long sword is pretty good. GORVANZ here. Yeah, it's all over in a hurry. Yeah, resummoners, it's just unfortunately a fact of life in Dark Souls 3. So this time we spawn right by the Dragon Barracks bonfire, and we see our host, the very, very non-edgily named Harold Anderson, kind of milling about the bonfire. Harold gives me a lovely bow, which I return, of course. No, I do not. I give Harold the invader salute. And the reason I do that is because I can't stand this idea that invasion should be kind of no healing affairs. If I wanted that, I'd go to the arena. And I'm at a hit point disadvantage, certainly at this point in the game, because of the 30% reduction. And so I'm just not interested. I'm just not interested in that kind of fight. And beyond that, 9 times out of 10 is a ruse by the host. They're either waiting for blues, waiting for their friend, or just waiting for a sign on the ground. So I can't be bothered with honorable duels and invasions at this point. I will fight solo host one-on-one, and I may choose not to heal, but I don't bow to set up some kind of unspoken protocol. So Harold, you may have noticed his R1 button seems to be broken. His circle button's working well, as is his L1, but the R1 button's just completely busted. It's probably very hard to play that way, so I'm surprised he made it this far in the game. But man, he is passive. So at this point, well, he's about to trigger the dragons, which I knew, but I didn't space out very well, as you'll see. So at this point, he was being so passive that I was concerned that he was either stalling for blues or stalling for our friend. I mean, he's just doing nothing. And sure enough. So thank you, Harold Anderson, for that lovely duel. These bows, man, come on. Harold still has not found the R1 button. But I've got 30 seconds after he hits the summon sign to take care of business, and since he went there very deliberately, he timed it exactly, it's almost certain it's a password summon friend. So I'm trying hard to take out Harold before Dinkle the Great arrives on the scene. Harold makes a terrible mistake. Thank you, Harold. Ooh, and it's a good thing. Those weapons are not a problem one-on-one, but they can be a nightmare in group situations. Their spacing is very odd, so I was glad to get out when I did. So we have the Sticky Bandit spawn point. And again, Steve, another player who does not favor edgy names, which is fine. Spearman's aggroed, so I know Steve has made it this far. And the dragons are aggroed, so he's gone to the bridge, but I checked to make sure he's not hiding back there. And then I see Steve sprinting towards the mobs. Appears to be alone. Now our last solo host was content to kind of just stall until the front arrived. But Steve here, Steve is taking care of business. And so I'm kind of content to just let Steve take care of business, and then maybe we'll have a nice fight together. Honestly, I'm not sure why I approached Steve this way. I don't know. Sometimes I'll attack hosts in the situation. Other times I'm kind of content to let them finish off the mobs. I think partly here is because Steve had the Undead Hunter's Charm as well, so it would have just been, I mean, not like taking candy from a baby, but like, I don't know, putting your boot on the baby's head and then taking the candy out. Just not both cruel and not a challenge at the same time. I know, to the extent I have any tryhard Invader viewers, that you're probably vomiting into a bucket right now, but I don't know. Against solo hosts, I have kind of different philosophies at different times, and I was content to let Steve kind of prepare so we could have a nice one-on-one. So I get some meditation in while he's waiting for the Undead Hunter charm to wear off. And part of my motivation is I don't get to fight people that use the butcher knife that often. And I do know it has crazy reach, but I don't have much experience fighting it, so I was kind of excited about that. Look at that, man. Now, several times in this fight I made the bad decision to kind of roll in anticipation rather than to reaction roll, which is a bad, again, terrible thing against a weapon with that kind of reach. I'm not sure how that one missed, but I panic roll. Man, that reach is tremendous. So thank you, Steve. It was a lovely fight. GG, my friend. So this time our host is Ines. I think Ines. Ines doesn't sound right. We'll go with Ines. Spearman's not aggroed, so we know the host is back this way. So clearly looking for a summon sign. Lots of stopping and starting, stopping and starting. But, you know, so I've been kind of trashing people summoning phantoms. It's really only the resummoning that bothers me. The only thing that bothered me about the invasion with Harold Anderson was kind of the total... Oh! Stomp. That was cool. The only thing that bothered me about the invasion with Harold Anderson was the total passivity waiting for the front to arrive. Probably that's just mostly just incredibly tedious. I don't have any problem with people summoning phantoms when an invader arrives. It's just the resummoning that gets a bit grating over time. Yeah, but Ines here is at least putting up a fight. They're clearly looking for someone to summon, but they're also not just, you know, running in circles, rolling in circles until the phantom arrives. There, I just had too many R1s queued up, so I couldn't take advantage of the guard break, but that time I could. Usually pretty good roll catching with the greatsword, but I was having all kinds of trouble in all of these invasions in this session. Here I knew Ines was fishing for the backstab, but in the act of rolling I left myself exposed. You know, I've complained in previous videos that I'm not great at backstabbing, and apparently my anti-backstab tech needs some work too, because I often, I think, leave myself exposed when I'm using greatswords in situations where I really shouldn't be. So at this point, Ines and the Phantom and I, it's kind of engaged in a long battle of attrition, really. I think there's another invasion upon rewatching where I think, frankly, I'm probably being too passive in engaging them. And you know, I think in general it's unwise, sometimes incredibly unwise, to go into a one area like a room like that with two opponents, just because it's very easy for them to flank you and for you to get caught in the R1 blunder. But I think in this specific weapon matchup, and because they were not coordinating well, there's really not as big a risk as it might usually be. You know, because I can interrupt both of their attacks with my hyper armor, and so I think I didn't need to be as kind of concerned with getting trapped in the blunder as I usually am. But you know, that's just kind of, it's very easy to see these things in hindsight. In the middle of the invasion, I was just kind of trying to keep myself safe and get in hits when I could, and I think which is all like smart play. It's just, but I do think one thing I'm learning from watching my invasions is that I think there are situations where I could be more aggressive. The problem is, of course, is that like And I think next episode or two there'll be one invasion where I was very aggressive and of course paid the price. So those tend to stick with you, and so it doesn't take too many losses to like groups of 2 or 3 where you felt like you were really the more skilled player and it was just your tactics that were the problem. You know, it was your rush into a small room where all 3 opponents were, you know, and that cost you the invasion because you just couldn't get back out because you got caught in the R1 blunder. Those stick with you. Those sting when you felt like you could have won the invasion. So I don't know. I think it's a bit of a balancing act. I think I played this invasion pretty smart, but I also think there are times where I could have been more aggressive. So I'm just chipping away at their health. I mean, there's a good example. That was a pretty prime chase down opportunity. So here we are now. Cloud Max here has got the Fairing Greatsword out. He has got no poise at all. So I mean, I wasn't able to interrupt his attack with an axe. I mean, I don't think I have any. I have pretty nominal poise damage with this weapon, and so he just clearly has no poise at all. I'm not sure whether that's because it's a weapon he doesn't typically use, or just doesn't understand the way poise actually works in Dark Souls 3. But he's having all kinds of trouble getting an entry on me with that weapon, when he really shouldn't. If he had sufficient poise, it would be a problem for me. I guess they were retreating to this back room in the hopes of finding another phantom. I can't really think of another reason why that interior room is any better than the other room they were just in. Yeah, I mean, looking at it now, the host must have been... Maybe they had waved the blue on and were waiting for some blues to show up, although... I don't know, the blues show up so quickly most of the time, I have to believe that they were just kind of waiting for another summon sign. So I'm just trying to bait them out. I mean, although why I was even trying to do that, I'm not sure. They clearly were not going to be progressing through the level while I was around. But I keep coming back to this choke point because it forces them to funnel into me. It gives me opportunities to attack both of them at the same time, which is smart, I think. But I think in this particular invasion, was probably more cautious than it needed to be. Having said that, it paid off. So Ines is, at least the way it looks to me, he's clearly looking for more summon signs. I think one of the big problems and why resummoning is often so disappointing for an invader is that the host does this. They just don't attack, or they attack so infrequently. You feel like they would be better served by, you know, putting up a fight. They take so much damage in the dodging process, sometimes fatally. It just doesn't seem to make much kind of tactical sense. So it's just really disappointing in that way. It's kind of a frustrating way to end an invasion. So final invasion from this session. We've got another solo host at the initial Lothric Castle bonfire, Super Hot Souls. I give a little throwing knife for greeting. We exchange the invader salute. So with the pyromancies, my primary concern as a melee build is, and based on what Super Hot was doing here, I was fairly certain they were trying to bait me to rush in and catch some black flame to the face. So I'm kind of content to just casually stroll around the Black Serpent. until they're done casting spells. Clearly with his Y-hander they were not a pyro only build, so I knew they would engage sooner or later. So Greatsword versus Ultragate is a matchup I'm pretty comfortable with. I was also kind of interested to see what else Super Hot had in their bag of tricks, if there's anything other than this Y and the Pyromancy. Spoiler, there was nothing else in the bag of tricks, but I kind of like this. Is a fun kind of build to fight against. So I decided to kind of switch things up. I kind of like using the whip against Ultragrates. You shouldn't trade like I did there, more or less. It's a very bad idea. But the rolling R1 has tremendous range. And if you can bait out their attacks or catch them coming in, it's pretty effective. I don't really like it as a change-up, but man, it ain't bad. So GG Super Hot Souls. That was a fun fight. All right, so this invasion here is a bit of a bonus clip of sorts. It's not from the same session as the prior invasions, but it was really interesting to me, and so I wanted to make sure that I shared it. So this particular invasion was, I don't know, kind of compelling, and it was barely an invasion in any meaningful sense of the word. This invasion in particular kind of tapped into something that I find kind of difficult to express, but it gets at why I love the dynamic PvP of the Souls games, and why I think they're so unique and special in that regard. So at a basic level, invasions are dynamic because you are interacting in someone else's PvE experience, which is really kind of incredible just in its own right. You know, but even through that dynamic PvP, there's a whole layer of narrative or of story that can happen through your interaction and connection with other players. And it's all mediated through a handful of kind of goofy gestures and through the combat mechanics of the game. You know, and those connections are entirely dependent on what you bring to the encounter, your perspective, your interpretation, how you choose to approach the game. You know, when you're invading, you really do bring your own personality with you. Not every invasion results in a story or a narrative, or maybe not every invasion results in an interesting story or narrative other than I'm here to collect your tongue or I'm here to beat you. But those invasions absolutely happen, and they're part of what keeps me coming back for more. And now I'm chuckling at the dissonance between these earnest words and me using the host as a dartboard, but this invasion appears to be absolutely nothing away from controller, host, my customary pile of garbage, and, you know, black crystal on the way. But this host accidentally or cleverly left a way of the blue on. So we've got an Estus Pinata incoming. Now, most reds treat most blues with utter disdain, and I'm no exception to that. But this blue, pretty feisty. Way more feisty than your average blue. So I was excited already. So with a nice backstab attempt there, I'm getting out the straight sword. So we have near mirror parry attempts. So I was already very, very intrigued by this fight. And then something beautiful happens. Now look, that's a small thing. It's a very basic attack and parry sequence, but I don't know, there was something so cool about having that kind of exchange with a blue, which never ever happens. And, you know, they seem to recognize that too. Now the host is awake, so I'm kind of cautious. And another blue is on the way. And you know there's no way. There's no way that Trocular is as cool as Dark Knightus. There's just no way. So I kind of hang out to keep an eye on things and see how things develop here. And look at Dark Knightus. Just chilling. I give Trocular the customary greeting of reds everywhere. Dark Knightus could not care less. I don't know. I mean, it seems goofy as hell to say this, but we had definitely bonded, and really just as purely through the combat mechanics of the game, we were able to recognize a player of similar skill level. And I don't know, and that's kind of all it took to kind of form this kind of weird temporary bond with this player. And here we try to resume our duel, and Trug Healer. Trug Healer. Come on, dude. So I do my best to take care of Trug Healer, and look at what Dark Knightus is doing this whole time. Just breaking furniture. Just waiting for me to kill Trug Healer. I was totally kind of enchanted with the blue at this point, with Dark Knightus. It's just such an unusual encounter to have with a blue. They're usually so bloodthirsty. So the host has summoned a phantom. Dark Knightus paying me no mind at all. Now look at this gold. Split leaf with Dark Moonblade. This is gonna do a little bit of damage, I bet. Yeah. 40% of my health per R1. That's decent. Jesus. I mean, come on. So Dark Knightus, they make their way past. Now, initially, I pursue in full spirit of a Finger of Rosaria, but you know, I kind of take stock of the fact that Dark Knightus can't heal, and they've been cool as hell. And I know who the real target is. Unlike any other invasion I've ever been a part of, my first priority is not the blue. It's this scumbag password summon gold bro with the preposterous buffed split leaf. And I get close. I get so close. But not every invasion story is a success. Sometimes there are tragedies. Dark Knightus, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm glad you got your proof.